Overnight, 1.5 million people have fled, essentially into the region that we'd moved to. So what was going to work to be working in some community development work with those that were affected by the several wars, the civil war within Iraq, as well as the wars between Iran and Iraq and other conflicts that had happened, turned into overnight, how are we going to help and serve refugees that are coming onto our doorstep. You're listening to Justice Matters with Tim Buxton, a podcast inspiring the fight for a world where everyone belongs.
Tim Buxton, welcome to the Justice Matters podcast.
Hey, yeah, well, it's good to be on my own show. What can I say?
You're on the receiving end today
Yes.
of the questions. Mm-hmm. And for those listening at home, or watching indeed, this is a video podcast as well about Justice Matters. And I am Ben, and I'm the best mate that Tim has ever had.
Yeah, man, we go way back and...
We're more brothers.
Yeah, I would say there probably isn't anyone else I would want introducing me then...
So I know that's a nice thing to say, and maybe you mean it.
You.
But, mate, I really am looking forward to getting into talking about what this podcast is all about. I know that from your personal, who you are, because, we go way back to, 12-year-olds. We met, and our journeys have intersected at different times and then taken great distances apart, worlds apart, and then come back together, and here we are. And I know that the subject of this podcast is not just something you thought of during the COVID-19 pandemic when you're at home twiddling your thumbs, because Mr. Tim Buxton, he is never bored. He is never not doing anything. He's never scratching his head thinking, geez, what am I going to do today? Never. This has been quite a number of years in the making. And I know it's particularly important to you because of what it enables, the conversations and stuff around social justice. So, shall we get into why a podcast and why Justice Matters?
Yeah. First of all, I do want to say, it is, I think, fitting for you to kind of talk to me about why I'd even start a podcast, because I can't think of how many things we've done together over the years. And, whether it be playing sports together or working together, how many jobs from paper runs together to working in delis to in New York together. And now, funnily enough, here we are working on podcasts and doing media stuff together once again. And, it's kind of special for me to have you as a part of the production team and helping to kick this thing off. So I'm pretty excited. Why a podcast? Well, obviously, this isn't something that's just kind of come up last minute. I was thinking about doing a podcast a couple of years ago when I first came back from Iraq, when I was living with my family there for a few years, and then we kind of got pulled up out of there pretty quickly, came here to Australia, and I wasn't really sure what was next for me. And one of the things I really felt like I wanted to do was start talking to my friends that I'd been so inspired with along the years, doing incredible work around the world, and just talk with them and interviewing them. And as you say, more recently, as it kind of came down to like, well, what theme, how are we going to put some flesh and bones to this idea of a podcast? It was resounding, this whole issue of justice. It's been an issue for me in my life. I've been passionate about really fighting for those that are oppressed and loving them well. And so, Justice Matters kind of came about.
Man, when you say that, it just makes me think back to, we used to muck around quite a bit, and we had quite a competitive relationship growing up, and there were times that it got quite heated.
It did. Hey, and we're still competitive still, I think, in subtle ways.
We are, and we're still trying to days. Yeah, we're still trying to get the best of competitiveness out of each other.
Yeah,
in healthy
ways. Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't always go right, but But I can remember we used to have that. You probably can still buy them, but the plastic basketball hoops that you'd put up. Hang on
goodness, yeah.
on Venetian blinds or whatever inside the house. And there was this rumpus room that you had in your house, remember? It was a nice big room that was just kind of, there's a piano in there was lounges, there was the TV, there was desks and lots of things. And there was enough space if we moved some things to create an indoor basketball NBA jam type of thing. But we used to slam each other up against the glass doors.
Yeah, I think we would put mattresses up against this glass doors so that we could totally...
Yeah, I'd forgotten that. We could slam each other even harder.
Play one-on-one.
I don't know how those doors didn't break. But, we used to... It was definitely not... basketball's intended to be a non-contact sport, man.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly wasn't when we played it. And I can just remember maybe sometimes something would happen, and I remember your passion for the fairness of the rules, and if somebody would break them, or somebody would have a different, opinion about what happened, your passion rose up for fairness. And I don't know, that just popped in my mind when you were talking about it. And maybe we can allude to that in your journey.
Yeah, definitely.
About really, how this really sense of justice and that and fairness and helping those oppressed come about. It's part of your nature, but also part of your story as well.
Yeah. Look, I think right now we see a lot of justice issues that get highlighted, and there's a lot of confusion, a lot of misconceptions, I think, about justice issues. There's a lot of controversy, people tend to get pretty passionate, as I can be quite passionate myself about what I believe is right and fair, and of course right now we've got, systemic racism, and quite often immigration and refugee issues that have really kind of risen to the forefront right now are really kind of issues that are kind of hot button things right now. But there's so many other issues that are out there that I feel like I have so much to learn and so much to be informed upon. There's also incredible people out there. I've had the privilege of knowing people I respect dearly. They've got skin in the game that are doing incredible things to fight. There's so many injustices that unfortunately our world is plagued with right now. So I'm passionate about giving voice to that, to learning. I've found that the most of the time that I've really grown and in my views and understanding of things is when I've humbled myself to be in the listener's seat and just to listen and to learn. I can quite often be passionate about what I think I know at the time, but it's what I hope. That's what I hope again out of this podcast, is that people will find a safe place, a welcome place to come, to learn, to listen. We're on this journey. None of us have it all together. None of us have all the answers. None of my guests will have all the answers. And so, there's grace, right? There's grace to learn and to grow in that journey. So that's really one of the things I really want this podcast to be, and most of those exciting things. The first season is really an engagement with a lot of my friends. Hence why I had to have you on.
Oh, I get it now.
As the first episode. No.
I get it now.
So just dear friends, people I really respect, people I
awesome.
love, people I know. They're not just hot air. They really have really made a difference and continue to do that.
So what is it? I want to get into your journey and and where you've been, and then youBelong, of course, and some of those initiatives that you've been a part of. But let's just kind of, we're talking about the podcast itself, and what do you hope that people will get out of listening?
Yeah. So hopefully you'll feel like you can come in and listen and really engage with the conversations that I have. I really hope in the process, though, you'll kind of be confronted a little bit, that you will, it'll get a bit uncomfortable because, there's nothing easy listening to gross injustices around the world, and I think getting a close-in view, listening to personal stories, listening to how maybe you unknowingly have contributed to the injustice and the suffering of others, and ways we can all do better. So, if you're up for it, I hope you don't mind if things get a little bit uncomfortable. And I've found I've only ever grown when I've been willing to get uncomfortable and been willing to challenge maybe the views that I've had, or even the echo chamber I've quite often lived within, where I find people around me that just believe what I believe and reinforce what I believe and or what I think I know. And so, again, these are people I trust. These are voices that I believe are real leaders and have made lots of sacrifices doing what they're doing. So, I hope you be confronted. But then, so I also want it, though, to be a hopeful podcast in the sense that at the end of maybe being drawn into some very difficult conversations, some conflicting issues that really deal with human suffering, I still want people to be inspired, really, that there are incredible people out there making an incredible difference, that it actually isn't that hard, that we can make a difference, even with little changes, little adjustments to our lives, that we can actually make a remarkable difference in someone's life. And I really want people to feel like after listening to an episode, that they really are going to be inspired to fight for a world where everyone belongs. And for me, that means where everyone has the opportunity to experience justice and freedom and compassion. And that to me really is the hope, that we go out there, not just listen to some interesting stories and kind of, get enlightened just a little bit, but really, we go out there ready to act, to do something about it. And I know from the guests that we've got, you're going to be ready to go out there and make a difference. I know I've been inspired by them, and so I'm excited to share those guests and these conversations with everybody.
Yeah, I've had a sneak peek at the guest list, and it's pretty juicy. Some really amazing people with just an amazing perspective, experience, and heart. And what you're talking about is surely a world that we really fundamentally all want, and most, if not all of us. A place where everyone belongs, a place where people are heard, listened to.
Yeah.
A place where if someone has and someone doesn't, that we can share. And you've alluded to some of the crises we have at the moment.
Sure.
And so often, unfortunately, these issues of social justice, they become political, they become polarised. Right. We get a left and right, and which have their place. And I think that's essentially, your message. But where does it go? How do we move this? How do we move it into an area that goes right and we make progress? Yeah,
like for me, it's kind of always it's always come down to this concept, and it's something I've really only been, I think, aware of more recently. Is a lot of the dominating voices out there, whether it be in the media or politics or that seem to dominate the airwaves today, tend to be dominated by very negative, emotive forces. And by that I mean, whether, like you said, there's the right or the left, there's the conservatives and the progressive or liberals, and we kind of box extremes. But they've both tended to use very similar negative emotions to kind of propel their message across. For example, on the left, if you have a view or opinion that might be different to somebody else, or to what maybe someone on the left might espouse to, and it's always funny to me that right left, like I might be left of you, but I'm probably right of somebody else. So it's a very subjective thing to be anyway. Like no one thinks that they're either left or right. They think they're in the middle somehow, some way.
Right.
Let's just use this kind of binary language if we have to. But if I'm if I'm right of where someone left is thinking, there's a great temptation, and we see it in the media, to shame. Oh, you must, how could you think that you're a bigot, or you're intolerant, or you're whatever the case might be, and we use lots of strong language. Some of it, quite honestly, is warranted. Yeah. If you come out and say pretty nasty things, you deserve to be called out. But there's this intolerance, there's this inability to, and so what I see is this use of shame and just real negative emotion to propel your point. But on the right hand of the equation, you've got fear being the other negative emotion, and this idea that, look, if we help, or if we let certain people in to our community, or we let people into our country, or if we let certain things to change, then watch out. Everything's going to fall apart, and the fabric. There's this fear domination tactic, really. That I don't know. No one likes to be to feel that sense of fear in them, so they'll do whatever they can to kind of align with that view. And to me, it's just so sad. I've never done anything, I don't think, in my life good or remarkable when I've been led by shame or fear. None of those emotions have really served me very well. And what I would wish, what I'd hope for is that, and this is to me at the heart of what justice is, right, is that we would be led by courage. We would be led by compassion. We'd be led by forgiveness and kindness. I mean, to me, these beautiful, positive emotions, they can have some fight to them. They can have some heart to them. I'm not talking about flakiness here. Some of the most courageous, brave, strong people I've ever met are incredibly kind and humble. And so I believe those are the emotions that should lead us forward as we tackle issues that rightly so just the most gross injustices in society, things that have been there for far too long, that we allow to be there. And we need to highlight these things, but we need to. I think we need to lead with those kind of positive, forward-looking emotions that lead and drive us. And I know whenever I've done anything of worth in my life, it's always been because I've been able to kind of be led by those emotions. Yeah.
And I mean, how do we break those those negative motivations and go to positive? I think what maybe we're doing here, and you're doing here with Justice Matters, is
talking about it,
is allowing the conversation. It involves listening. It involves, you don't never learn anything, or you never really grow by talking. You grow by listening, and then you get faces to a name, and you get faces to an experience, and in this longer form, you're able to understand, probably more so than a quick 2-minute Twitter or Facebook rant. Or
wouldn't you say, like, that's the one thing I find that I've struggled with social media, and I'm not always using it well, but you say something and it gets weaponized so quickly, or it gets jumped on, and suddenly there's this debate back and forth, and if you've ever got caught in a Facebook feud or whatever it is, it's like getting so misunderstood because you're just kind of going at each other. But you're right, like that's the beauty of of maybe a podcast. What I love about being able to sit down in longer form, chat with people, is conversations, man. It's where you kind of really do get the opportunity to really learn about somebody. And there's a quote that well-known author, psychologist Brene Brown has and she says that it's hard to hate somebody up close. And it's this idea of like, when I get to know somebody's story, when I really get up close and personal with them, I can't have indifference or hate towards you anymore. You will cross over into compassion and empathy and understanding. And isn't that what this world needs more than ever? Is this ability to listen to somebody? Or if I could use an example, this incredible guy that I've know personally. I wrote, again, one of those issues where you write a post on Facebook, and I was highlighting the recent protests that were happening in Australia that had to do with Aboriginal lives matters and deaths in custody. And this person remarked in my comment, said, look, isn't that where the protests burned the Australian flag? And I know it was a really well-meaning comment. And I know that because I know this person to be such a wonderful, kind-hearted person. But to then be able to say, look, I remember just thinking about what that was said, or how do I reconcile? It's a very tricky issue. Yeah, these aren't simple black and white often issues. And I thought, well, what I'd love to do is I'd love to sit with whoever may have burnt that flag, the Australian flag. Yep. And I'd want to hear from them, why did they feel so angered, and I don't know what pain in them, what was it that was rage that was in them, or whatever emotion they had that would make them do that. I'd want to listen to them, find out why, hear their story. I bet I'd probably learn a thing or two about them, and maybe I wouldn't be so outraged at what such an unpatriotic act that could be. And I think if all of us could maybe do that, they say we've got two ears, right, for a reason, and one mouth. And if we could be more inclined to, I'm saying this to myself, to stop, humble myself a little bit and listen and learn, I think we could, create a world totally where everyone feels valued, heard, and much fairer, beautiful society.
Yep. It's time.
Yep. Totally.
So what I would really like to hear now is your journey. I mean, you've taken on a sense of a drive to create a world where everyone belongs. That's the catchphrase of this podcast. You have a initiative here, a charity here called youBelong, and it's a fundamental belief. And can you tell us a bit about your journey? Not just screaming for justice, playing basketball for against me.
Yeah.
But how did you find yourself here with this? What was it that kind of created this DNA for you of social justice and belonging?
It wasn't long ago. I was listening to a podcast, and the guest just said, "Look, what's your core conviction that you have in your life? What is it?" And I had to stop and think about that for a little bit, as you do. It's quite a profound question. What would I say is a real core conviction? And I just couldn't escape from this sense of, everyone belongs. I want everyone to feel welcomed. I want, when people come into my world, my stratosphere, whoever they are, I want them to feel loved. I want them. Hospitality is huge in my family. When you come to a house, it's all about creating an environment of just hospitality and welcoming people, and loving people, hopefully without a gender, irrespective. I grew up, as you know, Ben, I was born in Indonesia, in another country, and my parents were missionaries in Indonesia, in particular in this place called West Papua, which is the Indonesian province of Papua. and it amongst a jungle highland ethnic group, the Dani people. I was a little kid there. I don't have much memories, but my parents, I think I was instilled from a very young age to have parents that just loved people and welcomed them too. I mean, I can even remember most Christmases that we would have, and this was when we'd moved back to Australia. I can remember we would have someone from the local low security prison system in our home sharing Christmas with us. Like, Christmas wasn't just this sacred personal family thing. It was where even the prisoners locally down the road deserved to be in our home. I'm so thankful and proud of that kind of heritage. We always had people from all over the world staying in our home, and I felt as a third culture kid myself, was never really felt like I belonged one place. It's probably spurred the fact that I've kind of travelled the world and lived all in various countries, even dragging my family with me. They've willingly come with me, at least my wife. The kids don't have a choice. But, yeah, exactly. And so, so I think that core value in me has been, how beautiful and wonderful this world is, and how much we all need to feel that sense of love and belongingness. And so, that was kind of like, obviously it became natural when we moved back to Australia after working with refugees in northern Iraq to really be passionate about helping refugees that were settling in Australia feel that same sense of belongingness, that they belong here, that they're not just as peripheral members of society, but as Australians, as the very heart. This is their place, home, as much as it is mine. And it's a very difficult thing to do when you're a foreigner, when you don't know the language, when you've experienced incredible trauma and you've lost everything. It's so difficult. And so that's kind of where, there's obviously a lot of places we've gone and I've gone and worked in over the years, but yeah.
Do you want to, people can obviously read your story in different places on the internet, and you have it. But do you want to go into and briefly touch on where it kind of started for you from your personal journey? You said you were born into a missionary family, grew up as a PK or pastor's kid in a church, and that's where we met.
Totally.
And right from the very start, there was always a strong sense of purpose that you had and mission that you had, and it was just part of who you were. And then it was around the time, 22 or something.
Around 22, yeah.
I got married, and then you were like, my best mate's got hitched, so.
Yeah, exactly.
So you just kind of took the first opportunity, right?
You'd found someone, ditched me, and I needed to go and obviously find my own wife.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I figured,
may as well
try
go to America.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Can you just explain a little bit about that work there, and then how that led to living in Iraq? Because that's a story, and we could go on quite a bit.
So, I moved to New York. I was, I forget now, it was 2004, I believe, when I first moved there. I'd travelled there once or twice before on a round-the-world ticket.
What did you like about that opportunity?
Yeah.
What was it?
So it was to work at a church called Times Square Church in the heart of New York City, and they had a massive, massive emphasis and focus on helping the gangs of New York back in its early days.
Yeah,
But also David Wilkerson, rode the cross and the switchblade, which for if you're a Christian and maybe a little older, because
I remember reading that book.
Yeah.
I went to a state school here, a public school, as you'd call it. And I remember it was on the list of in grade 9 or whatever, books to read,
Yeah.
And I remember reading that then.
Hugely influential book. And just like a remarkable story of someone who wanted to go into the heart of some of the most dangerous communities in New York and bring hope and light and love and the message of Jesus. And so, you know, for me, growing up in as a pastor's kid and my Christian faith being such an important motivator for me, and you know, I was really excited to have this opportunity to go and intern in New York City at this church. It was an incredible opportunity. I ended up staying there for 10 years. I met my wife, Sarah. But the job was really, for me, it was a dream job. I got to coordinate short-term trips that would go around the world, whether it be doing medical trips or construction trips or working in slums or in red light districts or homeless and drug addicts in Colombia. I got to coordinate these trips. I got to go and build and create these trips and lead them and train people that would go on them and how to best serve in these contexts. You know, because for me personally, that really was what, for me, Jesus was all about. Jesus was about going to those that are on the out of society. Everyone loved in the Bible, they would call them sinners, which was really just code word for you're just not good enough. You're on the, you know, whether you've got leprosy and you smell and you've diseased and you've obviously brought that upon yourself somehow in some way, or whether you're
right, you're cut off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You were ostracized. Yet it seemed that's all Jesus cared about, was being with those kinds of people and telling them you're already in. Telling them you're in my books. I've got this big circle called grace, and you're on the inside of that, and you're welcomed and you're loved. And in fact, it's quite often the people that were pointing the fingers and making everyone else feel like they weren't good enough, that he was very frustrated and angry, and passionately against. And so
that sounds like not really a religious concept, but
yeah, exactly,
just a fundamental concept of how we work together best as humanity.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. One of the verses in Scripture that has stood out to me over the years was there's a couple of them, and they're both quotations that Jesus says using another prophet from long ago, a prophet called Isaiah, very well-known prophet in Hebrew Scripture and in the Old Testament writings. And he, the first one is when Jesus got up and said, the Spirit of God is on me because he's got his hand on me. He's anointed me to bring good news to who? To the poor, to the blind, to those in prison, to all the outskirts, to those who are mourning, to those that are suffering. I've come here to tell you, this is your year. I've come here to give you joy where there's sadness, to bring freedom when there's shackles of bonds on you. And to me, that seemed to be so central to all that Jesus was about. And I think that for me has been what I've so wanted to be my life's kind of calling, especially growing up, and wanting to go into parts of the world which seemed to me to be so much suffering going on and so much pain and so much heartache. And then the last verse, which is where Jesus says, look, he talks about his own kind of approach to serving and loving people. It's like a bruised reed he will not break, and a flickering flame he will not snuff out. In other words, those people that are bruised and broken and bent over, there is no way that God or anyone who's doing his work, those are the ones we should go after to help to be there. Most people will just write it off and be like, you're not important. And then the flickering flame, right? This flame that's ready to just snuff out. And instead, he's like, no, these are the ones we are to go to help, to lift up, to breathe new life into, till that flicker becomes, a flame again. And so, it's kind of been, really at the heart of who I am, and really what I believe the heart of what it is to live out my faith.
So I know your story, of course, but from there you go with a family of 3.
Yeah.
And you decide, I don't know how, but you decide with your wife, and obviously a step of faith.
Yeah.
Sense of, yes, this is right for us. And I think maybe from a faith background, you had that sense of comfort that, this is a sense of calling. And, when you have a faith background, that can really assist in getting beyond the fear and going, and going, I'm going to step into this.
Right.
I believe in the nature of the
great sense of purpose.
And the nature of the universe as benevolent, as inclusive, as for those who are stepping out and seeking to make build bridges and make great change. And so you decided with you actually landed in Iraq, northern Iraq, and incidentally, that was the day that ISIS
invaded. Yeah. So
what did that feel like?
Yeah.
How did it happen? What did that feel like?
Yeah, I mean, the process of getting to Iraq, as you can imagine, wasn't just something that was like, oh, Sarah, let's go to northern Iraq. She was, I think, pregnant with our first child when I first went to Iraq, and really was like, oh my gosh, this is a place that people can go and help. It's not a place, it's not a no-go zone. You just can't not go there. And there were other families that were there that I was like, wow, other families are living here. This is possible. Maybe I can come along and help. And obviously it's a place where not many people wanted to go. And so that was back in 2010, 10 years ago. And so, it took a while, though, for Sarah to kind of warm to the idea. And it was always a decision that we made together. And I waited, I think, 3 years before we ended up moving there, after first indicating, hey, this was something that I'd actually be interested in doing. So we get there, like you said, ISIS invades the city of Mosul, just a 45-minute drive away from the airport that we flew into and landed at. No one had heard of ISIS. They were just a ragtag rebel group in Syria at the time, and then suddenly they rise to notoriety through their blitzkrieg into Iraq, and capturing huge amounts of land there, and in particular the city of Mosul, which was the second largest city in Iraq and had weapons, and they had captured oil fields, and it was just a time where I think overnight 1.5 million people have fled essentially into the region that we'd moved to. So what was going to work to be working in some community development work with those that were affected by the several wars, the civil war within Iraq, as well as the wars between Iran and Iraq and other conflicts that had happened, turned into overnight, how are we going to help and serve refugees that are coming onto our doorstep and are currently going through genocide and other immense sufferings. And so it was, like you said, that sense of, maybe this is why we're here. This is God's got us here for this reason. Kind of kicked in, and we went through some highs and some lows, some incredible challenges, a time where we had to leave quickly and evacuate the country, to then coming back in and really then launching into the work, which was called the Refuge Initiative. We started an initiative of the organisation I was with that really dealt with providing housing and education and trauma care to these families that were in desperate need. It was probably the most wonderful years of my life, as well as the most difficult years. Yeah.
Now here in Australia, obviously you had to up and leave there for different circumstances, different situations, reasons, I should say. And how did that then lead to you then starting youBelong over here?
Yeah, it was a very difficult decision to leave. We really didn't have a lot of time to make up our mind to leave when we did. We got on one of the last flights out of Iraq before the airports all shut down in that country for, I think it was almost 6 months.
Why was that?
Well, there was...
because of unrest.
Yeah, so what had happened was is the northern region where we were in Kurdistan had voted for independence, and that really didn't make southern Iraq very happy because they'd be breaking away if they followed through with that. Syria and Turkey and Iran were very nervous because if that went through, then the Kurdish population, which there's almost 50 million of them. There's 50 million Kurds. They don't have their own state. They're scattered predominantly within those 4 countries. Or it would have made all those countries feel nervous that an uprising and a breaking away of wanting independence in those regions would follow suit. And so basically all borders into our region were shut with all these nations. They kind of put the squeeze and said, look, if this is what you're going to vote for, then we're going to all make it very difficult for you. And my wife, Sarah, was pregnant with our baby number 4. And there was a progression in our work that we were hoping to hand it over to locals, and there was a plan that within a couple of years we would be able to leave and just leave the flourishing work over to the locals that were they're doing that. And so I guess with everything that went on, it was like, well, I guess now's a good time to leave. And it was the hardest. I mean, I never wept so much, and even memories of it still kind of go a bit deep there. And so we ended up coming back to Australia, and I quite honestly, Ben, I was depressed. I was a bit of at a loss. I felt like I was just in my element serving there. But I found out, I don't know how now, that families, Yazidi families from Iraq and Syria that had now been granted, refugee visas to come and live in Australia. And there was a town nearby, Toowoomba, 3 hours away where I was living at the time. And I just got in my car as soon as I could, drove up to see and try and meet with some of these families and meet with the community members that were trying to help them. And I just wanted to somehow be a part of that. And so that really was the beginnings of starting youBelong, and what it's become today, which I look back on now, and I think in the couple short years that it's been going, it's just thriving, and I've got an incredible team that I'm really kind of in the background, just kind of cheering them on as they do wonderful things to help these families just feel loved and really empower them. Really, it's just wonderful. Yeah.
One of the things about you, Tim, it really inspires me, it warms my heart to see how you embrace others and differences, different people, different cultures, and I've certainly seen you do that for these Yazidi people and the Kurds. And what are some of the things? Like you have picnics up there at Toowoomba, celebrations, and our family barbecues as Aussies are pretty
lame.
Pretty lame, right?
Totally.
I mean, there's no dancing unless there's too much alcohol, But these guys, what are some of the things that just great things about that culture?
Oh my goodness, they are the most hospitable people I've ever met. And, you know, I remember going back to living in Iraq. I remember coming back to the States for, I think, a 2-week trip, leaving my wife and kids in this small community where, I'd say small, 150,000 people in our town. There are only a couple of other Western families that were living in that town.
Yeah.
And I remember just feeling so at peace leaving my wife and children behind there, because I knew that probably every single day she'd be getting food dropped over at her house from the neighbours. They would check in on her. They would care for her like she was not only a guest, but she was like family. You would go to eat, and you could go to a Kurdish or an Iraqi or a Syrian or anyone from the Middle East, for that matter, into their home, and you would be treated like a king, and you would eat the most incredible food there is on this planet. There would always be 10 times more food than that would be for the people in that room at the time. It's because it's almost like they prepare a meal assuming that like 3 other families are going to be joining them that night. And so that's what these picnics are like. There's copious amounts of food to make sure that everyone feels like, hey, of course there's a room at the table for you, of course. And that table is a sheet on the ground, kind of like this little rug here, with food just plonked on it, and there's always room for anybody to sit at it. There's no set number of tables, set number of chairs at the table. It's whoever wants to can come. And yeah, the dancing's rowdy, the music is loud. I mean, it's like a rave party loud dance music,
like
and
speakers distorting.
Like, totally, and
it's not playing unless it's distorting.
And it's not, and you've got to make sure you're prepared to lock pinkies with another bloke or girl if you're a lady.
Okay.
And jiggle your shoulders and get the feet moving. Us Aussies look like the most awkward bunch of robots trying to dance when we join in. But unless it's you, Ben, because you got the moves like Jagger.
It's a pity this is an audio podcast.
Exactly. It's just a heck of a lot of fun, and a hospitality. And I guess it's what I miss even myself so much about the places I've had the privilege of living. And I think that we as Australia have done a good job at welcoming people. And I'm hopeful that we will continue to do that in so many ways. Yeah.
And that's part of the real value here of listening and learning from other people, hearing their stories. Yeah. And getting a sense of their culture. And I mean, it enriches who we are. We've got so much to learn from each other. We do some things good here and some things not so good in our culture. But it's beautiful when we can be welcoming, but we can also listen and learn and live together and appreciate each other's beauty. So, well, I'm looking forward to these stories. And you say you're interviewing friends. But the friends that you have made, I mean, Tim, I have to mention this. You've been in GQ magazine, which I'm still a bit, in our history of competitiveness. I'm not sure how I'm going to up that one. But I'm sure the listeners could go online and Google GQ and Tim Buxton. Right? And they could read that.
Look,
there's probably some nice pickies in there too.
Yeah, well, you're making me blush, Ben. I would say this, I do have some great friends. I've got people that I've looked up to over the years. I've been so blessed to know that you'll be meeting. So inspiring. People that have informed me and led me to become a better person. And I think too, that have made me realise that they've believed in me as well. People that have supported me and my work and my passions. I'm really grateful that they've agreed to come on this project that I have.
Yeah.
I really hope it'll have the opportunity to span a few seasons and really continue to be a place, like I said, where we can all learn together on this journey of making this place, this world that we call home, where a place where everyone belongs. And I'm super, super excited.
Awesome. Now I have to ask, because this is a question that you ask all your guests. And it's a great one to finish off, because there's going to be people listening that may have a sense that I believe in a just world, and I believe that I fundamentally that I need to make other people's problems my problem as well. But then a lot of us, like, I have enough problems in my life. Let's take it to me personally, 4 kids. You know what that's like. I've got a mortgage. No, I haven't got a mortgage, but I've got bills to pay. I've got troubles in my life. Why do I need to go looking for problems? And why does the cause of justice matter to you? And why should it matter? Why does it need to matter to every single human?
Great question. And
I'm not expecting some
mic drop answer.
Mic drop answer.
No,
mate.
and it doesn't have to be. I don't think it doesn't have to be a mic drop answer. For me, it comes back to my core convictions, and that is because we all belong. And the minute I say, you're worthy of love, you're worthy of acceptance, you're worthy to have your voice heard, you're worthy to have your dreams and passions to be pursued, but somehow you're kind of not worthy. I'm not willing to kind of do what it takes to make sure that everyone has the same opportunity to experience freedom, that everyone has the same opportunity to experience compassion. I don't want to make this a long-winded answer, but I think we're all complicated people. We all have issues. We all essentially have things that would kind of like write us off the list of being worthy, so to speak, if truth be told. But that is not the truth. I think we all are worthy, and we all should. We should be passionate. I should be passionate about using whatever opportunity and resources and privilege to make sure that other people less fortunate than me have the same opportunities. So, and I think that's what's going to create a world, build a world where we all, a more beautiful world, more wonderful world for us all to live in, for our children to live in. And that's my answer.
Well, mate, I'm subscribing.
Good.
For sure.
You better.
Yeah, I better. At least, is there a way you subscribe to just one episode? Like, because I subscribe to this one.
No, you can. It's a YouTube channel, Justice Matters TV, so you can subscribe and make sure whenever there's a new episode that drops. You can also become a Patreon. You can help me produce this.
Just talk briefly about that. What's that about?
Patreon, patreon.com/Justice Matters podcast, I believe, or Justice Matters. I'm not sure actually. I get that right in the show notes. In real show notes. It'll be correct. I should know that. But
is there a way to support?
You can support
just
for
as
little as $1 a month.
I can do that. I can do 3 of those.
We can even get you on the highlights. There's bonus content that'll be up there for people to listen to. Bonus questions for the guests.
Maybe even of this interview.
Exactly. You could even have a one-on-one Skype with me.
Wow,
really want to
mate, that's got to be worth
become a supporter of the podcast. But obviously we're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and other various platforms out there as well. So there's ways you can subscribe to the podcast there. So definitely get on it, share it with other people, if you gained anything, I hope it'll be something that you'd want to share with your friends. And
and just subscribing, I mean, is supporting as well. It really helps in the the online world that we have. If you believe in what this is
getting
about,
this message out.
Subscribe everywhere you can find a subscribe button.
Yes, do it, please.
Awesome.
Thanks, Benny.
Thanks, Tim. Mate, I'm so proud of you and the work that you've already done and your authenticity in your journey. I know this thing is not a fad thing for you, because I know you more than anyone. We sometimes say that we have kind of we have so many experiences that we have the sort of same consciousness.
I know, I'm like...
we share so many of our, as I said before, we have crossed paths and done journeys together very, very so often in life and unexpectedly. But I know one thing, that this is authentic, and you're an authentic person, and you're not only for the cause of welcoming people, but you are a welcoming and a person, and somebody that even, you talk about the Iraqis, I just thinking, going around watching the footy at your place the other day, there was food out on the tables, some great hors d'oeuvres, some variety, some, hey, come on, stay for dinner. It's just all part of your nature, and I so support you, and really thanks for letting me be a little bit of a part of it.
Thanks, Benny. Awesome. Well, hopefully there's a couple episodes already up, so jump on, listen to them.
Do that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's been fun, man.
Thanks, mate.
Well, you made it to the end of the very first episode of the Justice Matters podcast, brought to you by youBelong Australia. I had a great time catching up with my best mate Ben, talking about my own personal journey, my own passion for justice, and a bit about the purpose of season 1 of this podcast. I have a goal of getting 20 episodes out there, and I'm not going to be able to do that without your support. And if you want to learn how to do that, you can jump to our website, justicematters.tv, and on that page you can get a link to our Patreon page, where for as little as $5 a month you can become a producer of the show. For as little as $1 a month you can support and help us make this show, this podcast, a reality. A special shout out goes to Rachel Carter, who became the first Patreon. She's also a member of the youBelong team. Thank you so much, Rachel, for getting on board so quickly. Thanks goes to Jose Biotto, the audio-visual engineer, mastermind behind the scenes. And thanks goes to music duo David Gungor and John Art, also known as The Brilliance, for providing the music for this podcast. If you're enjoying it so far, would you consider reviewing and rating this podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you're tuning in? Or if you're watching along on YouTube, do me a favor, you can hit subscribe. You can also hit the bell to get notified when future episodes are uploaded. Please join me again soon for another episode of the Justice Matters podcast. I am your host, Tim Buxton. Thank you for listening.